Shanna here. Welcome to my channel all about finding joy while learning to live well with autoimmunity. I am so glad to have you here. So a few days ago, I interviewed Dr. Terry Wahls on an Instagram Live, and I had amazing feedback, requests to save it here, publish it on my YouTube channel. So here it is. I hope you enjoy. Hi, Dr. Wahls.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing really well. How are you doing?
Well, excellent. I clearly need to do this more often so I can remember each time how to do it correctly. I was like, okay.
Hey, I'm right there with you. I'm still trying to get the hang of it. Hey, I'm so happy to see your poop emojis, the background.
Yeah. Aren't they beautiful?
They are beautiful. So you guys who don't know, Dr. Wahls has an incredible seminar every summer, and she brings her poop emoji hat, and it's just an incredible time of community and connection, and you're just a wonderful, wonderful community, and the food is wonderful, and the speakers are inspiring. And so I just had your poop emoji hat just brought me right back. So
well, if you want, I can pop the hat on again for a moment for good time's sake.
I feel like we need to do that. I feel like
okay.
The poop emoji hat needs to come on.
Okay.
Hi there, guys. Welcome.
Here we go.
Yes.
And if I really be coordinated, I would quick get my hula hoop and see, I'll do a little hula hooping for you.
I was just going to tell you, now we just need hula hoops. Next time we do live, we'll have to get our hula hoops going.
We'll get the hula hoops together. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know,
we can all use more joy.
The things I really love about this seminar is, that we sing, not necessarily in tune. We dance, not necessarily on the beat. But we have a wonderful time celebrating each other, celebrating the success, celebrating the journey. So we've been doing it 6 years. It is just a spectacular, spectacular time. And I so love people coming back year after year after year to be part of this family.
Absolutely. And for, as autoimmune warriors, it can really feel, isolating, and we can feel alone. And a lot of us in our real lives, we don't know anybody going through exactly what we're going through. And so one of the things I love most is that, I went I didn't really know anybody, and I left with so many friends, and you just leave with such a sense of a unity and community, and inspired and uplifted and ready to just make those choices that you need to make every day to find joy and to learn how to live well with autoimmunity. So you've done such a wonderful job with the seminar.
What I learned from my time with the VA in the vets there is that change happens best in community. It happens best with peers. That I could tell all these folks what to do, but it's so much more effective when you have it in conversation with your peers and colleagues, and you hear from me the science behind why those interventions work. That's very important. You have inspiring stories from me, but that interconnection with that supportive tribe, very, very helpful.
Very, very helpful. And we laugh, we cry, we have fun, we move. It's just a wonderful time. But yes. A big congratulations on your new revised and expanded Wahls Protocol book.
Yeah.
It launched last week. I'm so happy for you. Congratulations.
Yes. It was certainly a lot of work to go through, update all the science, but I also felt morally obligated to do that because the book is so successful, so popular, and it's really a Bible for so many people on this autoimmune or neurologic journey. So I want to be sure that they had the latest science. I've changed my thinking on a bunch of stuff. And so that was also important to get out there, that I've changed my supplement recommendation. I've refined my recommendations on fasting and ketogenic eating. So there's a few things that need to get corrected and a whole bunch of new information as well.
Well, I love it. I'm so excited. And I love the work that you're doing for our autoimmune community, and that, well, the research and the work and the resources just keep coming. And so I just can't say enough how grateful I am as an autoimmune warrior and as a part of our community for your work.
We're doing some more new, very fun, exciting stuff I'd like to tell your community about. So
I would love that.
I'm very into the research. I have to build the research so we can change clinical practice. And our next study is for the newly diagnosed multiple sclerosis patient, newly diagnosed clinically isolated syndrome patient, who's been offered drugs and has declined them. And what we're going to do is use basically the Wahls Protocol, diet, meditation, and an exercise program. We will train them virtually. We will support them virtually. In fact, with me and my team, so it's very intensive. And we will do quarterly detailed questionnaires to understand how it's impacted quality of life, how you've changed or not changed your diet. And we'll compare you to a cohort of newly diagnosed MS patients and clinically isolated syndrome patients who likewise are doing surveys every quarterly. And they're just getting standard of care from their MS neurologist. And we'll compare the two groups. When the big question is, can we get people to change their diet and lifestyle using these virtual groups and support? And do we cause any harm? That's an important safety question. And then what effect we have. Now, this was going to be all in person. We were going to do all the training virtually, but we were going to do baseline measures of walking, thinking, vision, and MRIs. And like, man, we were so excited that we're going to get to have an MRI study comparing doing the protocol and doing drugs. But, you know, God happens, life happened, and the COVID came along. So now the university has said no in-person study visits unless it's a critical part of clinical care. Therefore, myself and all of the researchers here at the university were redesigning our studies, like what can we do in the virtual world? And fortunately for us, we can do a lot because I'd already created the intervention virtually. And we just dropped out our in-person measures. We kept up all of the online measures. It will actually make it easier for study participants to enroll. We're in the process of approval, requesting approval. So I don't have approval yet, but what I want all of your, anyone who's interested, and tell everyone you know who's newly diagnosed, to reach out to us at msdietstudy@healthcare.uiowa.edu so that we can tell you once we have approval, and then you can decide if this is right for you or not.
That's amazing. Such an amazing opportunity. I love that you guys have been able to transition as needed. So again, that's MS Diet Study. If somebody's interested in being a part of it, it's MS Diet Study
at healthcare.uiowa.edu. Yeah, and again, I have approval to do a study that has in-person visits. We can't do that, so we're doing a mod, and hopefully that will take us maybe a couple of weeks to get approval. Hopefully no longer, but you know, these are sort of unusual times. I don't quite know how long it'll take the IRB to go through their approval process.
Right, right. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And I will for sure get the word out on that too. And anybody who's listening, I will add that to the comment at the end so that you can just go ahead and shoot an email if you are interested in that. It's an amazing opportunity and such exciting work. I love hearing about that. Along with everything that's happening right now in the world with COVID-19, what advice or tips do you have for our autoimmune community?
Yeah. So this is really a very important topic. So many people are reaching out, asking big questions like, I'm newly diagnosed. I'm afraid of my disease. I'm afraid of the drugs. I'm afraid not to take the drugs. I'm afraid of COVID. Like, oh my God, what do I do? And so that's a complicated question. And you need to think about your disease that you have right now. Are you being told to take the drugs to prevent future decline? Or are you told to take the drugs because you're in such terrible shape right now? So if you're in a catastrophic shape right now, you have to do at least steroids to try to treat the acute question. Pretty often the specialist will say, take this binder, go think about it, and they'll be okay with you taking a couple of months, sometimes even 3 months to decide which drug to take. what a great time to be all in on diet and lifestyle while you're sorting out which drug should I take, because you might be surprising your specialist by coming in doing really great. And so we have here at the university many patients, because I'm well known here in Iowa, they come in and say, I want to do the Wahls thing first, and if we can't, avoid the drugs. And so our specialists will say, well, if you're going to do the Wahls thing, you got to do it 100%. You can't do it just sort of. And then we'll follow you closely. And we've had great success with people who really do the whole program. And so, and I'd say more and more specialists, in fact, are taking that approach, that diet and lifestyle should be the first thing you do. And depending on how severely disabled or compromised the person is, you start drugs immediately, or you say, be all in on the Wahls thing, and we'll just follow you really closely. And if you don't get a good response, then I'm going to tell you, you got to do a better job of following the Wahls Protocol, or you got to take drugs or do both. And so that's getting certainly more commonly implemented here in Iowa. And there are more and more specialists around the country. Well, they'd much rather people take drugs. They're having more people come in and say, I want to do the Wahls thing. And then they're like, well, okay, you got to be all in. We'll follow you closely. And if you aren't doing well, I want you on the drugs. And I think that's a reasonable approach.
Absolutely. I love that. And your own story is just so inspiring. Would you share a little bit about that,
sure.
About where you were and how this even came about?
Yes. So I have multiple sclerosis. I was diagnosed in 2000. And being at an academic medical center and believing in the best drugs and the best technology, I knew I wanted to treat my disease very aggressively. So I sought out the best MS center in the country, saw their very best physician at their center in the country, took the newest drugs, and went steadily downhill. I discovered the ancestral health movement, the paleo diet. After 20 years of being vegetarian, I went back to eating meat, giving up all grain, all legumes, all dairy. I continued to go downhill. I needed a tilt recline wheelchair, spent 4 more years getting steadily worse. By 2007, I could not sit up in a regular chair. I struggled to walk 10 feet using walking sticks. I had a tilt recline wheelchair that I functioned in. I had a zero gravity chair at work and at home because I could not sit up anymore. I had severe fatigue, and I have trigeminal neuralgia with electrical face pains across my jaw that over the previous 27 years have been getting steadily more severe and more difficult to manage. And I've been following functional medicine. I've been trying a bunch of supplements that they have slowed my decline. Yet when I had this really big aha moment, which was, what if I redesigned my diet to still using paleo concepts, but took the 36 nutrients that I had identified from functional medicine and my own review of the research as critically important for my brain. So that was a few more months of research. And I implemented this new way of eating. And the results were stunning. Within 3 months, my pain is gone, my fatigue is gone, my brain fog is gone, and I'm strong enough I can sit up at the table to eat again. And then in 6 months, I'm walking throughout the hospital without a cane. I still have a limp, but I'm walking, and I get on my bike for the first time in 6 years. My son jogs on the left, my daughter jogs on the right, my wife is on her bike behind, and I bike around the block. My son, my daughter, they're crying. My wife is crying. I am crying. And if I talk about this much longer, I'll start crying, because it was so miraculous. I had accepted that I would never improve with progressive MS. And then in 6 more months, I'm able, with my family, to do an 18.5-mile bike ride. And again, we're all crying, and I'm crying now, because that was when I understood that how much recovery might be possible, and that the concurrent understanding of progressive multiple sclerosis was incomplete. And ultimately, of course, this would change the way I practice medicine, and it would change the type of research that I do. And we have dedicated my practice and part of my mission to teaching the public that if I can come back from such profound disability using diet and lifestyle, and I've been off disease-modifying drugs with my neurologist blessing for almost 13 years now, that there is hope for them too. Are you crying?
I'm crying. I'm crying because people need to know that what we eat matters, that what we put in our bodies, that the choices that we make every day, that the way that we choose to live our lives, it matters. And it's not easy and it's hard. And I don't have MS, I have Hashimoto's, but I hit my rock bottom a couple years ago, and my rock bottom was nothing compared to yours, but I had lost the life that I once had, and I didn't want to live that way anymore. And so that's when I discovered that what I ate mattered, and that how I live mattered, and that how I think mattered, and that no matter how old we are, we can change, and that there is hope, and that there's things that we can do, and that we have the power. And so I think one of the hardest parts for me to wrap my head around after my diagnosis, and when I was struggling to even get out of bed, and I had lost the life that I once had, it was hard for me to wrap my head around that this was lifelong, that there was no medicine I could take, there was no cure, that I knew what happened when I lived and ate the way I had always done. And I thought, well, what happens if I change the way I eat, if I change the way I live? Maybe nothing will happen, but what do I have to lose? And it made all the difference. But I will say, and one of the things I love about what you share in your work is that it's not easy, it's hard, but that we do have the power. And I'm curious, like I know for me, like nothing about it came naturally. Like I had to learn how to cook these nutrient dense radical things called vegetables, right? And I had to learn to eat, like I didn't even eat seafood, I didn't even eat like a lot of these superfoods. And so was your wellness journey, was when you started to eat, to change how you eat and lived, and self-care, was that hard for you?
You know, it was a long process. You know, my neurologist told me about the work of Lauren Cardane. So it was a very big deal after being a vegetarian 20 years to go back to eating meat. And then, I wasn't improving, but like, well, this might take several years to, repair all this stuff. And I was clearly still going downhill, but at least I was in control. And then when I'm in the wheelchair, it's like, okay, I have 2 young kids. I have to do everything that I can because I want my kids to grow up emotionally and financially well. And so I wanted them. I'm an athlete. I have a black belt, and I competed nationally in full contact free fighting before medical school. So I had thought I was going to teach my kids athletic stuff, be a wilderness traveler, and that's how I was going to teach them how to be emotionally and financially successful. But, very rapidly it was clear that was not going to be in the cards. And so as I was getting more disabled, I had to keep reimagining my life and keep reimagining how can I teach my children? And that if they were going to be successful as they face their difficult times, they had to see me get up every day, do my little workout, go to work, give them chores. They complained that it wasn't fair. None of their friends knew anything about dishwashers or washing machines. And that's so unfair. Now, they're like not, 10 years old, 8 years old as they're having these complaints. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's so unfair. But these are your chores. You have to do them. And I can't do them. I have to go to work, do the best I can. And that's just how life is. It's not fair that you have these chores. It's not fair that I have MS. But life is not fair. But we do the best we can anyway. And, both my kids, separately stamped their feet and complained that, Mom, I think you're glad you have MS, so you can lecture me about chores. And of course, now they're horrified that I tell that story. But, that's what young children do. They're self-absorbed that way. What is remarkable, though, is we can choose life's not going to be fair. We're going to have enormous difficulties. We can see that in spite of those enormous difficulties, there are things I can learn. There are things that I can use in this part of my difficult life that will still be beneficial. And so in my difficult life, I could use the fact that, yep, my kids had real chores, and they understood that the work they did really mattered, and it wasn't fun. But now that they're adults, they look back at that and realize that they had learned immensely from our family life and immensely from those chores.
Absolutely. I relate. I think, you know, my kids were 8 and 10 when things started going really south, and they saw me, and I had always homeschooled, so they actually saw, they had a front row seat to it all too. And I held a lot of mama guilt for a while, because I used to be, you know, like taking them on field trips and doing all the things with them and being super mom. And then I lost that. And it took me time to understand that, as broken as I felt inside and out, that this was happening for me, and that I could learn, and that I could grow, and that I could become a better mother and a better person. And that even when I couldn't get off the couch, I was exactly the kind of mama my kids needed, because I could still love them. I could still hear them. I could still support them. And they learned how to grocery shop, and they learned how to cook, and they learned how to do things, and they still do them. And now I realize what a blessing that was.
What
that
a
when you're
blessing
in
that was.
it can be so hard to see, you know. And
you know, the hardest lesson to learn is that life's not fair. Terrible things will happen, and you get up anyway. And parents, that is very hard to teach your kids, because we don't want our kids to have to experience terrible things. We don't want to have them have those hardships. But if we rob them of those difficult experiences, those pains, then we rob them of learning how to get up.
absolutely.
And you know, as difficult as COVID-19 is, and it's a terrible thing, nobody would want this. But life is not fair. We have it. We can either be pissing and moaning and angry and bitter, and you have time to do that, or you can say, yep, this is pretty terrible. What can I learn? What can I learn from this? Where's the benefit? And I have to admit, it's pretty hard to come up with many. So I've been working at it myself. And one of them is, we don't get to eat as much fast food made by someone else. That people are learning that we can cook at home. And that, you know, I talk a lot about this on my own Instagram, is here is how I cook. There's a little recipe that I look at, that sounds interesting, then I go to my refrigerator, my freezer, my cupboard, see what I have on hand, and I use the ingredients I have on hand. And it might not taste quite the same way as the recipe had intended, but it's still going to taste pretty good. Or even if it's sort of mediocre, I go, well, you know, next time I should have add a little more, a different spice. We need to learn how to cook, and to be liberated from our recipes, realize that we cook with what we have on hand, and you can make things in 10 minutes and 15 minutes. It's not that hard. And some of your meals will be spectacular and wonderful, and some will be duds. And like, so what? That's how life is.
Absolutely. I just made the grossest cod the other night, and it was terrible. But you know what? We had our veggies. We had, you know what? Like, it's okay. And our kids are learning that nobody's perfect, and that sometimes life happens, and it's okay.
And it's okay. And that resilience that you're modeling for your kids is profound. And so, yes, none of us wanted to have this COVID stuff going on. Terrible things are happening. It is hard to watch. My wife is going to the hospital, and she's in the thick of this.
Oh no. Jackie's sick?
No. She's a worker. She's one of the those healthcare heroes who are in the hospital seeing people.
Oh, bless her.
We didn't want this to happen, but here it is. The one thing that we can control is our decision to, I'm going to learn from this. I may not be learning the things I want to learn, but there are some things to learn that could be useful for me, for my family. And if all that my family realizes is in the midst of uncertain times, we can still be thankful for some things. Like, you know, I'm immensely thankful that I'm doing enough self-care that my face pain is staying quiet. So I'm meditating, I'm going outside, I'm walking around, I'm still doing my exercise routine. I do another meditation. So I keep upping my self-care. And Jack's sort of checking on me because we know high levels of stress will turn on my face paint. So far, you know, my self-care program's been doing a good job. I feel fine. We all have to think about what can we learn? How can we optimize our self-care? Because if you have an autoimmune problem, we are in that high-risk group. I'm 64, so I'm in that high-risk group. And so I can't change being 64. I can optimize my autoimmune condition as thoroughly as I can with diet and lifestyle, so I can make my vulnerability less. And so that's the message I keep telling my tribe is we need to embrace and work on all the factors that are under our control. And that's diet, our exercise, our meditation, our family time, my intentional expression of gratitude. It's not going to take my risk to zero, because even some young 20-year-olds will get this disease and have terrible outcomes. But I can assure you, if you have a terrible diet and you're not doing self-care, you make yourself far more vulnerable to having a severe case of COVID.
Right, absolutely. And I love that you share, you know, one of the hard things for me to wrap my head around, well too, was to carve out time for self-care, to carve out time for you know, stress relief and all of the self-care things. And I love how you shared, I think it was in your stories a few weeks ago, but you shared how you do spend 2 hours a day on self-care. Can you talk a little bit about, 2.5.
Yeah,
Can you talk a little bit about that?
I get up in the morning, I'll do my meditation, then I will get dressed, I will do my workout routine. So I have a strength training routine, do some muscle during that, or some days I do swimming, or when it's getting warmer now, some days I do biking. So one of those three things are happening. Then I come in and I do a little more balance training. Then I get into my sauna, and I will do reading for pleasure for 40 minutes in the sauna. Then I come out and take a cold shower, and then I get dressed and begin my day in terms of what kind of work that I'm doing. Now, instead of doing my pleasure reading in the sauna, I'm doing gratitude meditations because that's probably a more important, intentional way of reducing my cortisol, improving my cytokines. Because we want all those cytokines to promptly go up for the infection and then promptly come back down. So gratitude exercises are a very helpful strategy.
Absolutely. I start every day with gratitude too, and I spend a couple of hours in self-care too, and it can be really, really hard, but it's so worth it. Another thing that I remember that you said at your seminar that really stuck with me was that you know, life is not perfect, and sometimes we have autoimmune flares, sometimes we have autoimmune symptoms like pop up, and even though I've been on my journey for years now, I still have symptoms like pop up from time to time if I don't manage my stress right, or if my self-care falls off, or maybe I get, you know, accidentally cross-contaminated with gluten or something. And it can be really easy when that happens to think I'm a failure, this is my fault, well, just to kind of get on like a negative thought pattern. And I remember at your seminar you said how important it is to embrace your symptoms as God's gift, as feedback. I
Yes.
love that.
So I talk about my Wahls behavior change model. The traditional behavior change model has 5 steps: pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparing for action, taking action, sustaining action. Which is brilliant. That's helpful to understand how people go through the process of giving up today's pleasures for tomorrow's benefits. We have 15 steps in my model, and one of those steps is teaching people how to use their biosensor. And that is getting people tuned into what are my subtle symptoms that tell me I'm on the verge of something much bigger. So for fatigue, headaches, belly pain, skin stuff, any of these, and you might have several subtle symptoms that are warnings. One thing for me is the sensation on my face. If that begins to be a little abnormal, I'm like, okay, what was my exposure? Is it stress? Is it too much toxin? Too many airplane rides? Was it cross-contamination in the food? And because I know stress can trigger my face pain, and we're all a bit anxious during this time because it's harder to predict the future right now because of what's going on with COVID. So I'm paying very close attention to my face. How's my face feeling? I'm paying attention to my legs because I can get neuropathic pain in my legs as well. And then I'm like, I have to keep doing my self-care. So now I've added another meditation in the evening, again, because I recognize that we're in a stressful environment. So far, my biosensors are okay. I want to keep them okay. And Jack and I sort of, we check in with each other because sometimes your spouse can recognize the biosensor change in you a little ahead of you. And it takes a while to let go of listening to their advice that they really do have some very good insights. So when Jackie said, hon, I think you need to add an evening meditation. I think it'd be really good for you. And I was like, well,
Love that.
I have a lot to do so that you do less if your face pain turns on. So I think you make the time. I go, okay, well, you are right. If my face pain turns on, I can't function. So I made the time.
I love that. I love that. And it's so true. Like our spouses are so good at
Such a
noticing
gift.
things. They are. And I got into like a really dark place one time, right around, I was trying to start to change how I ate and lived, but I wasn't quite seeing all of the results yet. And I was just really down, and I was crying, as I was often doing at this time. And my husband looked at me and he said, I think you need to write down every night 10 things that you did today that you can be proud of. And I remember being mad and looking at him like, what am I doing right now that I can be proud of? I can barely get out of bed. I'm not doing all these things I used to do, but I didn't want to offend him because he had been going through a lot along with me. And I started doing that years ago, and it really helped me because sometimes we look at accomplishments and victories as what it is, but it's really the effort behind it. It's really how much you're trying. And it took everything in me to get out of bed, and it took everything in me to try to figure out how to make sweet potatoes, and to try to figure out how to eat kale, and to try to figure out how to meditate. Like, I didn't know these things. And so I started celebrating the effort behind what I was doing, and it really was a game changer. So I still do that every night, even though, all of this time has passed. So our spouses really can be so insightful in gifts, and I'm so grateful for that. I did want to open it up for a few minutes. We just have like a few more minutes, but does anybody have any questions that you have for Dr. Wahls? Any questions on autoimmune disease, or on her work, her new book, the COVID? So here's one. Can we program our next day by meditation before sleep? Thank you for lighting.
I think that's a brilliant idea. I recommend it highly. And the other thing you can do is say, I'll remember perfectly everything that I need to remember. I'll recall it exactly at the right time.
Okay, and then here's another question. I'm curious, how do airplane rides cause flares?
Because you're up high, you have radiation, you have a lot of plastic exposure, you have pesticide exposure, then all the recirculation of bacteria and germs that your fellow passengers have. So for me, I can do 2 plane trips a month and do okay. If I do 3, I'll start having problems. So if I get over 12 hours of flying time in a month, I tend to not do as well. So I have to admit, there's part of me that I was actually very concerned about March and April because I had so many flights planned for my book launch that I realized, I didn't have to fly. Everything got canceled. I did everything virtually, and so there's part of me that was so pleased to get to do things virtually, as you and I are now, so I could still reach everyone. But I got to be spared the stress of flying.
Thank you. And then I do see some questions about supplements and vitamins. And I heard you say something just a few days ago that I loved. And you said that you can't supplement your way out of a terrible diet.
Correct.
Can you just talk a little bit about supplements and
supplements? I want to remind everyone the paleo diet did not recover me. I continued to decline. The supplements that I learned from the ancestral health world, functional medicine, did not recover me. I continued to decline, although I could tell I had less fatigue if I took my supplements. It wasn't until I redesigned my diet to stress the nutrients I'd been taking in supplement form. When we take food is vastly more complicated than the 36 nutrients that I tell you about in my book that are really important. In food, you have thousands of compounds that all support the biochemistry of life. And they're there in the biologic ratios that we anticipate. Every nutrient that we take has a U-shaped curve in it, even water. Too little water, and we die of dehydration. Too much water, and we can die of water intoxication. Everything has to be in ratios. Now, so in my book, I talk about my thought processes as I see someone based on their history, their exam, and some basic primary care labs that tells me how to supplement them and when to know that I filled up their tank and I can take the supplement away. So you certainly want to read the book to get that guidance because, yes, supplements can be incredibly helpful. But if you over-supplement the nutrient, then it becomes toxic, just as an under amount of nutrient is toxic. And so you need someone to help you. My book can act as a guide. You could then work with your primary care doc to get sorted out when you filled up your tank and you could go off the supplement.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And then here's another question. How do you clue into those subtle signs of a flare? There are so many and I can't find the connections.
So I talk about this a lot in the book, so you'll get a lot more details there. I think a very helpful strategy is just to begin journaling. So in my clinics, I have people often keep a food journal and then pick 2 symptoms, just 2 of them, that seem to be the most annoying in terms of their quality of life, and rate the 2 symptoms, 1 to 10, and they have to decide if 1's a good number or if 10's a good number, but you want to be consistent. And so you look for the patterns on what you've done with your diet and lifestyle and your changes in those 2 symptoms. And remember, you are now being the principal investigator of the research that will guide you for the rest of your life. You will learn, you will get better at this with time. However, like every good scientist, you need a lab notebook so you can record your observations and learn as you go. It's fun, and this can be sort of a fun family activity. I invite you to have your spouse assist you with the observations, and you can do all the rating of your symptoms. But if your spouse says, honey, I've noticed this new symptom, and it seemed to have gotten worse after you had tomato sauce, listen to them. or her, him or her. They have tremendous insights that are worth recording in the notebook. You can decide you want to ignore it, but for sure record your spouse's observations.
Absolutely. And I second all of that. And too, I found that I felt the same way, that it was so hard to figure out in the beginning what was from what. But it gets easier as you learn, and as you notice patterns, it gets easier.
And so you can pick just one symptom, but I would never track more than two, particularly when we're first learning how to be your own scientist. It's fun. It's a process learning all this, and this can be one of those things you can be really proud of, that you're gonna, if you decide to do that, to write down that I'm being a scientist. In my book, I try to teach you how to be the principal investigator of your life, so that you can continue to refine your dietary intervention, your lifestyle interventions, the supplements that you use. And you'll do that based on your observations, because none of us have the same DNA, none of us have the same microbiome, none of us have the same toxic load. And so what is most powerful for me may not be what is most powerful for you.
Absolutely. I love that so much. And we had some questions too on about celiacs, about Hashimoto's, about hypothyroidism. And yes, this book is for all autoimmune conditions. It's for all kinds of chronic conditions. And I just can't highly recommend this enough. It was out last week.
Yes.
Dr. Wahls, there is a question. Can you get the book as an audiobook? I assume on Amazon you can.
Yes, there are audio options there. And so what's a little bit confusing as people try to buy the book, because they kept the ISBN, the number is the same, and it will say that it was published in 2014. What you're looking for is the revised edition. And if you'll look, why don't you tell them how many pages is in the book? Because
So there's over 500. There's 541. And then I actually have your other book too. So there's 541 in the new revised and expanded, and there's 421 in the older version.
So that is the easy way for you to know which version that you're getting. Unfortunately, I think the audio gives that detail on the page count as well. So that way you'll know that the audio has the corrected version.
Okay, perfect. Dr. Wahls, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for everything that you're doing. Thank you for sharing your story, and that what we eat matters and how we live matters, and that we do have the power to change our lives as autoimmune warriors. And you're just so inspiring, and I can't thank you enough.
You know, and I want to reassure everyone who's so frightened about the COVID, that there is so much that is under your control. Implement the concepts in the book that will get your cellular physiology as optimally tuned as we can. That will address all those factors that are making you more vulnerable to the infection. There's no cure. All we have to work with is our diet and lifestyle. So please go work on that. Get yourself as tuned up as you can, and think carefully about what it is that we can choose to learn during these challenging times.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I did see another question about your seminar. It is
Yes.
in the beginning of August. And are you still planning on having your seminar at this point?
It is so critical to get all this information out to everyone. It's never been more critical at any time period. So we're watching very closely to be sure that we can deliver this information that is so vital. And of course, we are committed to everyone's safety. So by all means, keep staying tuned, and we will make sure that we get everyone informed, and that we do it in a safe way for everyone. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And again, I'm hoping to be there again. And if you can be there at all, I can't recommend the Wahls Protocol seminar enough. In the meantime, Dr. Wahls' new expanded book is out now, and you can get that. And again, thank you so much. Please tell Jackie hi for me. I got to speak with her quite a bit at your seminar, and I love her. So please tell her hi and give her my love.
Do it. She just walked in.
Oh, hi.
Oh, hi, Jackie. Hi. I wish I could give you a hug.
Yeah, I know. Well, stay safe.
Thank you so much, you health hero. You're in my prayers.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, now that she's in the hospital so much, even Jackie and I are maintaining that 6-foot distance as well. So we're all trying to keep everyone as safe and tuned, and we're eating our sauerkraut every day and doing really good with that self-care.
Yes, and if you don't like sauerkraut, everybody, you can learn to like it. I'm speaking from experience here.
Yes, it is.
Okay,
It is an acquired taste. Start with just a forkful, and over time, you'll discover that it does taste pretty darn good.
It does. It's amazing. It's amazing how our taste buds change. Thank you again, Dr. Wahls. Thank you for everything. Thank you for thank you everybody for joining us. I will save this. It will be available in my stories for 24 hours, and I'm going to go ahead and type in that email address again. If you are interested in being part of Dr. Wahls' amazing study, just send them an email, and
yes,
and they're doing it all virtually, so it's amazing.
Yes, tell your friends. We want to get some folks registered. That will just be so wonderful.
Okay, thank you again, Dr. Wahls.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Okay. Bye-bye. All right, so you guys, thank you again for tuning in. I'm just typing in right now that email address for you so that you can shoot an email over there. And if you'd like to be part of that amazing study, it's such an amazing opportunity. Or if you have someone that you know with MS who is struggling, please forward this information to them. I will also put this in my stories. Let's see, MS Diet Study at healthcare.uiowa.edu. Does that look correct, Dr. Wahls?
I'll put on my glasses so I can read it.
Okay.
MS Diet Study at healthcare.uiowa.edu. Yes, that is correct.
Okay, perfect. Thank you again, and take care, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, so that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Please let me know what your thoughts are. If you have any questions at all, please let me know. I'm happy to answer them. Dr. Terry Wahls is so inspiring, and I hope that you enjoyed this. Please share this with anybody that you know who is battling MS or has any type of autoimmunity. I publish new videos every week on finding joy while learning to live well with autoimmunity. So if you don't want to miss any, please hit subscribe, and I hope you have a wonderful week.